This meeting is being recorded.
All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Dr. Jeannie Hannon. I'm the Director of Programs for Time to Heal Cancer Foundation. We're excited that you are joining us today for What's Normal After Cancer. And I'm excited to introduce our speaker today. Mary Grace Zeleny is a PhD. She's a trained therapist, educator, artist, and advocate. She holds a PhD in educational psychology and values the importance of learning. Currently, she is in the process of completing a teacher certification in mindfulness and meditation and has completed her teacher training in compassion. She has facilitated groups for A Time to Heal, as well as retreats and workshops for those working with cancer in many aspects. Mary Grace has used art, writing, and movement in various community spaces, as well as during her own cancer journey, and continues to hold the arts as an important part of connecting, healing, and thriving. So please join me in welcoming Mary Grace.
Thank you so much, Jeannie. Thank you, everybody. I'm just really delighted to be here. And I see some familiar faces. I'm sending hugs to all of you. And I really am just happy that we're all connected with the Time to Heal. Before we begin, I invite everyone to get into a comfortable position, whether it's sitting or standing or lying down, whatever's the best for you, where you're relaxed, yet in an alert state, meaning that maybe you won't fall asleep, but stay with us and present. And then, if we can, let's just take a moment to greet each other. And the way that we can do it is I see that we're all across the top there. And what we can do is we can move the little cursor to the right if we want, or we can just see who's right across the top there, but there's a little arrow if we want to move that. And the other way we can greet each other is we can write in the chat, hello, or whatever you want. So we can greet each other from our heart, with our expression, with a hello. We can say it out loud. So, however, let's just take a moment to welcome each other to this space.
Good morning. This is Barb out in New York.
Hello. Thank you, Barb. Love to hear your voice.
Hi, this is Betsy from Iowa.
Oh,
Hey,
wonderful.
Betsy.
Betsy.
And I did want, someone had mentioned in the chat that they're a survivor. And yes, this is for survivors, caregivers,
Yes.
medical professionals. It's for everyone. So yes.
Mm-hmm. We're so glad you're here. So, as we keep greeting each other, whether it's just from your heart, expressions, waves, smiles, chat, whatever that is, notice how it feels to be welcomed and to welcome others. And I invite you to notice all the different types of beauty in this Zoom room and in your hearts. If you're not aware of the beauty of your own heart yet, we're noticing that for you. That's the beauty of A Time to Heal, this community. And now I'd like to shift to a little bit of just taking a couple deep breaths. And if deep breathing is not comfortable for you, take a comfortable breath, whatever that is for you. If deep breathing is comfortable, take a deep breath in with a longer exhalation and do that a couple of times. And then back to normal breath. Now, I wanted to do that to settle us into this space, but also if breath becomes an anchor for you, meaning that if your mind wanders, you're thinking about grocery lists or what you're going to do later, or, but something other than being present in this moment, use the breath, come back to the breath as an anchor. If the breath is not right for you, you can use an anchor of just noticing your hand and the weight of your hand on your lap or the table or whatever you're doing. So, with that anchoring, I'd like to try a little movement to get us into the space with a little movement as well. So, we're going to do just slight movements, but remember, if it's uncomfortable for you, adapt to what is comfortable for you. You don't have to do it exactly how we're doing it. So, there should be no pain, no discomfort. Shift when you need. The first movement involves raising our arms and our hands above above our head if you can, but I call it confetti. So what we're going to do first is just kind of imagine you're gathering up a bunch of confetti clenched in your hands, and then raising your arms up and letting the confetti go, and then sprinkle it down over you. And we'll do that one more time. Gathering the confetti, bringing it up and sprinkle it all over you, letting it just fall gently like a gentle rain in the spring. Now, the next thing is that we're going to just do a little bit of movement with our shoulders. And we know that if you've been a participant in Time to Heal, we do some movement as well. So this one is just, again, in a relaxed position, and we're going to just move our shoulders back a couple times, maybe 3 times. And now we'll move our shoulders forward another 3 times. And when you've done with that, just notice your breath in a natural state. Hopefully, we're here and that you're settled a bit. So today, we'll be talking about that word normal. And before we begin, I'd like to begin with this poem by Rumi. This is called The House of Arriving Winds. Each morning, the door swings wide to strangers in the weather, a laughter that smells of ripe figs, a grief that drips like rain from its coat. They do not knock, they enter with the dust, with the scent iron after lightning, with the hush of snow in their hair. I set the table for all of them, the quarrelsome, the tender, the lost. Pouring tea into chipped cups that remembers other hands. Some will leave crumbs of silence. Others will scatter bright seeds that sprout on the cracks of my floor. I do not sweep them away, for every visitor remakes the room, and even the storm, when it departs, leaves the air tasting of new light. Jeannie, we can go to slide 2.
I'm trying to advance this slide.
That's no problem. We'll just,
Hold on.
and when you get there, you can go to slide 3, I think.
Okay.
I love that poem, and it speaks to me of all different kinds of emotions and experiences that we all have during these cancer journeys and really in life. We all have things that we know are not the same anymore. That perhaps this cancer journey has illuminated reflective thoughts about what was, what is, and that's most likely what brought you here today. So notice how you're arriving. Do you have some trepidation? Do you have some curiosity? When Jeannie asked, can you speak about what is normal after cancer? And I said, well, Jeannie, I don't know if I could even speak about what was normal about myself before cancer. But seriously, I'm a cancer survivor. I was diagnosed at age 41, a single mom of 2 sons. I had just graduated with my master's degree and was 6 months into a new job. Like all of us, I faced shock, fear, anxiety. Anger came, some gratitude in between, like the cracks on the floor, joy, despair. And I wondered, who am I in all of this? So each of you here, each of us have unique stories to share about ourselves. Sometimes it might feel like we have multiple selves, but we're all connected in some way to experience. And just as the poem notes that all different visitors come into our room, those visitors might even be ourselves, our outside selves, our inside selves. But we have one thing that can connect, and that is our hearts. So before we go into a reflection, I'd like for you to notice, if you can, there's a painting behind me. And this painting I did during cancer treatment because I wondered about, well, who am I? Who am I as a mom? I was a single mom of two boys who didn't talk to me during that whole year of, pretty intense treatment and thereafter. So I'll read you an excerpt from this painting, a poem, Wise Wind Mother. O great mother of wisdom, let me hear the soft nestle of wisdom you gently whispered to my mother ears, so I may pass it on to my own. Let me feel the strength of 1,000 mothers before me as I am reminded in a strong wind that blows around me and through me. Help me to climb atop mountains with my children and know the beauty we can see through eyes of wonder. Great Mother Wisdom, teach me to be still enough to hear, see, feel, and love. To graciously know myself and love myself enough to pass it along. Let me know others' wisdoms too, so I may recognize my own in the process of becoming a wise woman myself. So we might have men in this group too. This goes for you too. But with that, in this settling practice, I'd like to just bring a little thoughts from you. What brought you here today? So that is the most question. And you might even think, how are you arriving here? Are you curious? Are you nervous? Are you sad? Are you angry? Maybe you have some feelings, but honor your thoughts. How do you think of yourself as your old normal or your new normal? So with that, those are just some little tidbits. If you can write something, you have something to write with, that would be great. If you just want to think about it, that's okay too. Or if you want to put a phrase or a word in the chat box, is that okay, Jeannie, if they do that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Then go ahead and do that. And I'm going to just time this for like about 1.5 minutes, so it won't be very long. And it could just be one word or phrase. What brought you here today? And what was it about this topic of normal that brought you here? Finding a place to pause. I know that that wasn't very long, but okay, we have some chats, do we? Okay. Let me see if I can see some of those chats. I can. All right. Oh, I love all the greeting. Okay. And somebody's sad. So acknowledging your feeling. Loss of my old self. Yeah, so there could be some grieving here too about that. Moving forward after cancer, how to better support survivors. Okay. So we have, really some things that we're going to share that are common amongst some of us. And we do know that we're going to go into some feelings in the later part of this talk, but this is what brings us here, a mixture of all kinds of things. Some of us might be experiencing cancer who have gone through cancer. Some of us might be care providers. Some might be caregivers of loved ones. So all of this is the thing that bonds us. Anybody want to speak out loud about any feelings or any thoughts of kind of this topic of normal? We can take a couple comments if you'd like. And if you do want to talk, I think since we can see just a little bit of you, probably just speak out. Is that okay? Okay. What is it about the topic of what is normal?
My name's Shelley. I'm in Oregon.
Yeah.
I put loss of my old self. I guess
Yes.
also, I'm on one of the aromatase inhibitors, so I've got kind of the ongoing issues, and I feel like my medical professionals, as wonderful as they were, kind of didn't mention that some of this could go on for years. You know, uh, some of the side effects could be permanent, some from the chemo, from the
Yeah.
radiation, just from the surgery. And so I feel a little bit like shocked every time I realize how much I've lost.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that, Shelley. And so we hear a lot of feelings here, some grief, some deep loss, and you're not alone. And then
I'm Barb.
Yeah. Continue to support and bond with is that breast cancer sister and helping them get to a new normal. That's great. So Shelley, thank you for that. I'm going to go on because I think some of this will speak to what you're speaking about here, these feelings. And so I'm reading off of a part of my script. And so I'm going to stop every now and then so I can see you though. Okay. So the definition of normal that I took from several sources, conforming to a standard or expectations was like the overall thing. And from other sources, it was a pattern that is typical, usual, expected. And for most of us, it might be what we're familiar with, what was habitual. I'm looking at my son's definition here because I asked him because he went through this with me. And Shelley, so you are experiencing what you're familiar with now has changed. Perhaps a lot of those things have changed. But isn't it a part then about a judgment of ourselves as well? So here is what Jason says. External normal is a culturally negotiated baseline. It shifts across contexts, but simply that it is something that we were familiar with and now we're not. It's a real friction because it diverges from what we knew to what we don't know, but we can create. We can create. So you might have thought or said, I will be normal when? I wish I was normal like before, but really, maybe it's something like, who am I now? And so I hear a lot of this kind of questioning about who am I now, especially when I facilitate a time to heal groups. But we do also know that something has been disrupted. And sometimes we see that outer self looking different, maybe not connecting to the inner self. Maybe it's kind of scary too. At a recent retreat, our leader said to close our eyes and take a finger and point it to our nose. And we all knew where that was, that nose on our face. And then he said, with your eyes closed, take that same finger and point to where the goodness is of your heart. well, we don't have a specific place, but it's all inward. It is us. So for us to recognize that could be part of this journey. So if you would now just kind of inner reflect, take a moment. And if you haven't looked at your reflection of the outer self, maybe do that. And what do you see? Think about that reflection of you and see something that you notice that is beautiful about you. This is something outward. It might be hard because maybe we have some physical changes. I know I did. The who am I now question becomes a sense of journey of exploration through these valleys and rivers of emotions and feelings, and perhaps even a sense of identity. So with that reflection, what do you see? That seeing could be inward as well. Finding your beauty, finding yourself inward. But it's not easy sometimes, especially if we're transitioning from something that we knew for so long, that we could see on the outside and the inside, that others could see from their lens as well. So I wanted to explore that a little bit. So when Jeannie said, what is normal? I thought, this is the question that comes up so many times. Who am I now? And I would say a handful of participants at least said, I don't have a sense of identity. And so I thought, okay, how can we explore identity on this journey? So thank you for changing that, Jeannie. So many participants say, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. I'm not the same anymore. I wish I could do. And then if you're not the same as before, there is some sadness in that. There is some grieving in that. But also, it could be a fertile ground for exploration, and you're not alone. One person noted, it's like an identity crisis. Think about pivotal times in your life, though, that you had sort of this identity pivotal, like when you had to kind of change your thinking about yourself. Maybe not only with cancer, but other times you might recall. So it calls for a shift of thinking and a shift of doing, and maybe some grieving, and maybe some forgiveness. And as a matter of fact, some of the studies pointed out that if we can shift this thinking, and they call it flexible thinking, that cancer survivors can get to a positive psychological space. And you're saying, oh yeah, well, that doesn't sound so easy. And it's not. It is not easy. Is it linear? No, it's not. But flexible thinking is merely just thinking about something in more than one way. Maybe adjusting our approach to new things or new situations. And psychological flexibility can lead to self-compassion. And this can then aid cancer patients in ultimately experiencing more psychological well-being and exploring the new normal. I know we've heard that term a lot. What is the new normal? I recently heard in a retreat I was in that we begin again each day. We get to decide some of that, how we are going to begin each day. So is the new normal, I'm beginning again. I'm grieving, I'm acknowledging feelings, and I'm beginning again. But here's some other information I found through the exploration of self-identity for cancer patients. So a team of researchers studied almost 800 cancer patients over a period of 5 years, and it suggested that those who identified themselves as cancer survivors, so acknowledging, I have survived this, I have gone through this difficult thing, versus those who just identified as, well, I had cancer, and that's in the past, But the ones who identified themselves as cancer survivors reported better outcomes in terms of personal and interpersonal strength and growth, acceptance, and life satisfaction. Basically, it was their acknowledgement of the experience and that they took control, their own control of how they define that. In another study with breast cancer survivors, this kind of negative body image, that's something that some people carry with them in this identity. We grieve that loss of whatever it was, if there's something visible in body. And they noted in the study that it was impacting their quality of life in a number of ways. So apart from grieving the process, they grappled with the expectations of what societal image tells us. And I thought about that because I myself, I'm a breast cancer survivor. I had multiple surgeries, and I did struggle with how I look. How do people see me? But this study actually found that a 6-week mindfulness and self-compassion course was actually helpful to shift body image and identity to a positive one. A couple of other things I looked at was recreating identity in a therapeutic realm. And I thought, okay, some of us are therapists in the room. And also, I'm an educational psychologist. So I do teach like Erickson's psychosocial identity model, Marcia's identity model. And these all have basic elements of exploration, but resolving kind of who we are within these little kind of, not little, but they call them crises or life shifts. But the basic elements, especially in Erickson's psychosocial identity model, is that we have continuity between ourselves, past, present, and future, and that we have personal control in life as a part of a well-developed identity. But for those of us who have experienced cancer, we know that the continuity and sense of control has been interrupted, and new adaptations of identity beg to be reformed. So earlier I asked you to look in the mirror or just kind of imagine yourself looking in the mirror. And I looked in the mirror. The other day, my sister sent me a picture of when I was undergoing cancer treatment. I was in a clinical trial with something about the chemotherapy and frequency and strength, and I didn't recognize myself in that picture. And I thought back to that time. I had gone to an arts festival with a friend on a good day. We all kind of know that if we have the good days of chemotherapy, post-chemotherapy. I saw someone I knew and I said hi to them, and they just looked at me. And I told them who I was, and they looked frightened. They didn't know the outside me. I did look different. And I grieved that moment for a long time. So, what is your story of looking in the mirror? We all have a story. And how do we perceive ourselves in that? I invite you to write down some things, your story about looking in the mirror and maybe seeing, do you see normal or not normal? Do you see, are you calling what you see something that is not familiar to you? And we'll just take about 1.5 minutes for that timed writing. Okay, and wherever you are, find a place to pause, or you can keep writing. And we're going to have a little time to share too in just a moment. So when you look in that mirror, you look in your outside self, maybe your inside self, maybe how others see you. But what I found in my exploration of this identity is perception of identity plays a large part of how we function and how we see ourselves. And so there were a couple studies that said understanding our perception of our illness, our cancer journey, is a step in taking control of our lives, which then can help us develop resilience. And the findings in one study said that improving our understanding of our cancer journey, of ourselves in this cancer journey, and taking control over that can enhance our psychological well-being. So think about how you perceive and maybe what is impacting your perception. Our perception can also play a role in our feelings and emotions. And I thought about my youngest brother about perception. He didn't have cancer, but he had Down syndrome. He knew he was different, not the normal kid. He was born at a time before special education policies were not in effect. As a matter of fact, the practice of having babies go to institutions right from birth was something that was in practice. But we brought him home. And he came home to us and was delighted with life as we were with him. And his perception of being different was really that he didn't have any qualms about it. But what was his normal? Well, he had a hole in his heart and he died as a young adult as a result of that. But he actually kind of used humor with that. Before he died, he figured out he was seen as different. He might introduce himself like, "Hi, I'm Joey and I have Down syndrome." Or he might say, "I love you from the bottom of the hole in my heart." And so his perception was a shift, even though it was not kind of the normal in the whole country and the world. So I think about that as my inspiration sometimes. Feelings and emotions, we'll go to that. If feelings and emotions, especially when we have change, we want to honor and be aware of our emotions and feelings. What I recently learned explicitly is that emotions and feelings are different. Emotions are a body response to something. We know that having this cancer journey, we have an emotional body response. Sometimes we have kind of a trauma response where we are maybe feeling in this fight, flight, or freeze mode. And then feelings are the result of that emotion that can sustain over a longer period of time. In mindfulness practice, being aware of feelings and not pushing them away, and also not getting caught up in them, is a first step into cultivating self-compassion, which can then also lead to resilience. Shelley mentioned loss, and that is something that we probably all have encountered, especially if it's something that is unexpected loss. Grief is a complex emotion. I included grief here because a lot of participants will say they're sad from the loss of what they knew as normal. And grief, some say, is made up of several emotions. It's also something that is experienced differently in different cultures. We might have felt this as we experience our loss of normal, and it's a typical response to loss. Sometimes also grief can pull us out of this present moment and pull us back to what was before. And sometimes we might get stuck there a little bit. We might need a little help out of there. And sometimes that grief can call up our fear of what now or the future. Many participants in the groups that I facilitated, I'm sure that all of you have facilitated, know that fear is something that is there in fear of the unknown. So know that you're not alone. Sometimes fear can actually move us. It can sometimes move us into doing something. I wanted to point out that for those of you who have gone through a Time to Heal survivorship class or who have facilitated it. There is a wonderful activity in, I forget what week that is, but that facing fear, there is a whole chapter about facing fear and some very tangible things that we can do with that and noticing where fear lands in our body. Sometimes it's jarring, sometimes it's persistent. So, I wonder if we can embrace fear sometimes as, what do I need to do with this? We might even face fear with a mindfulness attitude, the present moment, with no judgment, and say, "Oh, hello, fear. I see you. I hear you. I'm not going to push you away today. I'm going to hold you close. I'm going to comfort you." If we don't address fear, we know that fear will be tugging at us. But what is at the base of fear? I heard somebody say that they might imagine fear as this younger voice, this younger self of, "I don't know what to do, guide me, nurture me, hug me." So how can we nurture when we feel that fear? So both of these emotions are, either in the past normal or looking ahead to the unknown, or now the new normal. So, and the kind of new normal is what we are in now. And what do we have control over now? We can actually love ourselves and we can love others. That's within our control to do, but it does take practice. I'm going to pause out of my script here because I want to just check with everybody. And I want to just see, is there anything that resonated with you or anything that just resonated with you? Any word or phrase, feeling? Hi, Elizabeth. I see you up there.
I was cold. I had to put a sweatshirt on.
Oh, glad that you did that. Anything about emotions, feelings, about what is normal, about what you're experiencing in this kind of new phase of life? I love this. Embrace the moment and remember to love yourself. Thank you. I don't see your name, but I see iPhone. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to go on. Then if I don't see any more, let's see.
I just wants to mention about like
Yes.
when you were talking about emotions and things,
Yeah.
fear is kind of real, and
Yes.
like before, I don't think I was fearing that much. But anyway, even thinking about when you are going through chemo, and it just, fear was kind of dominant emotion that I felt while going through, and so it seems then many people. Really, if you think about it, right now we do the um, support group, and then we're just in the process of sharing, and then you just admire everybody, how brave they are, that they all faced certain fears, but then they they survived, and it just
Yeah.
courage it took and all that. So I think I myself went through a lot of fear, and then it seemed like a lot of other people are going through fear or went through, and then I just admire all the group people, as they share what they went through and things like that. So when you were talking about emotions and especially fear, it kind of struck me.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that, sister. Yeah, fear. It's a big one. I think I lived in fear for quite a while. And sometimes things trigger that fear too, even when years later. I think Shelley, maybe you mentioned that, there was some lasting kind of grieving and fear with some of those things. And we hear that all the time. We're not alone with that. But sister, I love that you said we're courageous. Yes. And that courage to walk through all that we are is part of building our resilience and connection to one another.
And Mary Grace, along with emotions, someone shared in the chat that they felt phony and vain when they were wearing a head covering, and they feel happy and vain to have their hair back now.
Yeah. Okay. Phony and vain when you had the hair covering, did you say?
Yes, that's what she said.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
happy and vain to have her hair back.
I love happy and vain. Happy. Yes. Oh, yes. The hair thing is a deal, isn't it?
It is.
Grace during the journey. It's okay to be angry. Yes. It's okay to be tired and sad. It's okay to have these emotions. This is real. Embrace the emotions. Yeah.
Mary Grace.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when you brought up the feeling of fear, I kept asking myself, I'm going, I didn't think I had fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I that is interesting. I'm going to have to explore that a little bit more. But I worked with cancer patients for many years,
Yeah.
and I did the Time to Heal survivor group for many years. And
Mhm.
then I retired, and that's when I got cancer.
Ah.
And I think that having some of that knowledge beforehand and just what other cancer survivors went through and shared,
Mhm.
and stuff, I think that was helpful for me.
Mhm.
And I think that um and I just recently I have a good friend that's going through treatment, and she's had somewhat of a rough time. And she texted me one day and she said, um, you made cancer look so easy
Ah.
through your treatment. And I was like, I was taken back by that.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, I don't know what I did differently, but it's something for me to explore. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Man, I do remember that you said that about the fear.
Did
And
I?
it's,
I,
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it's okay. And some people don't. And thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that from your heart. Reappraisal of ourselves, sometimes called our new normal. So really kind of taking a look at ourselves and saying, okay, let's reappraise this. One study pointed out that those who engage in more mindful coping tend to engage in positive reappraisal when adjusting their illness conditions. And actually, this produced more post-traumatic growth where we see something positive that comes out of something really difficult. And then gratitude can come into play with that. We can have some gratitude. We can see gratitude. In all of our groups that we facilitate, I'm sure all of us have seen or heard gratitude stories. I was grateful for these people who did this. I was grateful for this, and for me to accept that. So Robert Emmons is a leading researcher in gratitude and said it's acknowledging goodness. And it could be a feeling of out of relief or joy, but it's an action that we have control over. It's a gift. We can actually cultivate feelings of joy, and joy is both an emotion and a feeling. It's an immediate emotion response, and it can be a sustaining feeling. But sometimes it takes practice to kind of practice accepting joy. We can actually feel joy and sorrow and grief and confusion at the same time. So it can be an and rather than a but or only. So, putting this together, how do we accept our new normal? Well, acceptance is a practice, and mindfulness is part of that. And mindfulness is, being present and being present with ourselves and not judging ourselves. That means forgiving ourselves at some point, but just being present. It could be just an easy, I'm here, you're all here. And across all of the studies that I looked at, acceptance of change through an illness was positive for creating a mindfulness practice that included self-compassion or loving kindness. And so mindfulness is a practice of awareness and being in the present moment, but also it's creating the anchor when we do have something that takes us away from our center. So Nan spoke about she didn't have any fear, and I talked to her about that before. And it's like, Nan, you have this equanimity, you have this center that you've practiced maybe all of these years too. But finding that place that we still acknowledge our feelings, but we can still be in the centered place with that. We can still have joy, fear, other kinds of things, but we can be centered with it. Self-compassion is a noticing of maybe our suffering or what we're going through, maybe anxiety, pain, whatever that is. But practicing a nurturing self will help bloom a post-traumatic growth versus staying stuck in the trauma. And it helps with that reappraisal of self, the recreation of a new normal. And then through all of these studies too, loving kindness, we do have control over loving ourselves and we have control over loving others. So even in the midst of, if we feel we have lost control over things because of the cancer journey, because we've lost what we knew, our familiar self, and now here is our self in the present moment. And by the way, all the other things that I have read said that actually yesterday was a different self than today. And I thought, well, I'm going to change my perception then. The mixture of joy and grief and loss, loving kindness can hold all of that together. So when you ask yourself, what is your new normal now? I gently encourage you to acknowledge and welcome your beautiful heart. Because again, your heart has always been with you. Connecting your heart, your mind, body, that beautiful you. And you have control over naming your own identity, the retelling or telling your story, the recreating, the rewriting of the story of you. And in doing so, you build capacity of the heart and home, and the home, which is your heart. You might engage in loving kindness, and loving kindness, I'm not going to go into too much of it, but just in simple terms, it can be in everyday times, noticing kind thoughts or shifting our judgments about ourselves into kindness and gentleness for ourselves. It can be also loving kindness for others, which is kind of a wish or a dedication. Like, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering, may you be safe and protected. So those are pieces of loving kindness. I want to read you this poem that I thought was really beautiful, just to kind of bring together that we all have roots, and our roots of our spirits, of our hearts. The branches might look different at times. But this poem is by Carrie Newcomer, To Be Like a Tree. To be like a tree, see how the trees reach up and outward as if their entire existence were an elegant gesture of prayer. See how they welcome the breath of spirit in all its visible and invisible forms. See how the roots reach downward and out, embracing the physical, the body and bones of its soul of earth and stone, allowing half its life to be sheltered in the most quiet and secret spaces. Oh, if I could be more like a tree on this morning, to feel the breath of invisible spirit touch me as tenderly as a kiss on the forehead. If I could courageously and confidently dig down into the dark, where the groundwater runs deep, where shelter and sanctuary can be had and held. Ah, to be like a tree, with all its bent and unbent places, a whole and holy thing, from its topmost twigs to the deepest taproot, to all the good and graceful spaces between. And so all of you bring this grace, bring all of these experiences to you, to all the good and graceful spaces in between. Before we close, I'd like to offer this very short loving kindness meditation for you. And, again, you can do this for others, you can do it for yourself. It's best if you practice it first with somebody that you're close to, then maybe somebody who, before you kind of practice it with difficult ones or across humanity. But today we're going to practice it for you. And so after I say a line, I invite you to repeat that line silently to yourself. If it feels right, you can even put your hand on your heart. May I be deeply happy. May I be safe and protected. May I be at peace. May I live with ease. May I be deeply happy. May I be safe and protected. May I be at peace. May I live with ease. And now, if you have a wish for somebody, excuse me, you can just do that inwardly and send them a wish, which we call a dedication for someone, a positive wish. And then notice the connections you've all made here today with each other. And thank you, everybody. I think we can just settle into that for a bit, and then we'll go into questions and answers. Basically, it's a discussion part. I don't have all the answers to everything, but it could be a discussion. How about that?
I remember feeling when I received my diagnosis after I got over the shock was that I knew I would be okay because I had family members that had survived breast cancer. I didn't know what that would look like for me in that moment, but I knew that I would live through this somehow. And well, actually, more positive than that, but I knew that I would survive this. I didn't know what it looked like. And then I packed away. I was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. And the oncologist said, I'm glad you didn't wait 6 months to get a second opinion. And I had read the pathology report because I have a patient portal. I packed that away because my first thought was, this is horrible and I can't cope with this. I need to get through the treatment. I get all the way through chemo. I have my surgery. I get my pathology report. The cancer was gone. Everybody around me is really excited. And I thought, I'm not excited. Oh, wait a minute. I have to go unpack that and think about the diagnosis before I could celebrate that I had beaten it. And my cheeky oncologist said, no cancer, no treatment, no mammograms. I'm like, yeah, they're gone. Those are moments in my journey that were actually kind of positive because, and I felt while I was in a situation in which I had no control over a lot of things, I had control over my reaction. So I have been amazingly calm, and that's not my normal. So even 27 months from the end of treatment, I'm still trying to figure that out. That's a part of me that I did not know before.
Mhm.
Perhaps that's a gift from the cancer, of the cancer.
Mhm.
Mm.
And I appreciate you acknowledging that out loud. Thank you for that. See, I'm looking in the chat. Yes, you may get a copy of that poem, and I can give that to Jeannie. Is it okay I'll send that to you after the session, and then, yeah.
Sure.
Mhm.
Are there
For
questions?
that, for that matter, I'd like to have a copy of the loving kindness meditation. I think if I can see that if when we do that for ourselves, we will, you know, heal ourselves and be kind to ourselves and for other people as well. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, sister. And I would like to point out too that keeping the loving kindness meditation simple is the best. And you can even write your own, but I'll send you what I wrote. And I'll send you a little information on that too, if you'd like.
Stay on.